Revenue and net profit of Tower Bersama Infrastructure grew double-digit. Indonesia recorded minus economic growth in the second quarter of 2020. Good afternoon, viewers in Indonesia and Singapore. Market Headlines is ready to provide you a number of informations from business, economic, and capital market sectors. With me, Clara Antawijaya, and this is Market Headlines. And yes, viewers, we are going to start market headlines by looking at the Jakarta Composite Index intraday movement. So JCI opened at level of 5,064.24, and then approaching the closing time in the first session, the index was on the level of 5,083.56, and the index was showing strengthening trend by the second session's closing time. The index was closed at the level of 5,137.05, and in short, JCI was strengthening at 1.03%. And next, we are going to see the sectoral movement. Leading the dynamics of today's trading, we got mining as the leader of the strengthening trend, going up 2.98%, infrastructure going up 2.25%, and consumer goods going up 1.85%. And next, as leader of the weakening trend, we got agriculture, that going down 0.02%. And next, as the top gainers in today's trading, here's the list of the stocks for you. We got KAEF with a value that went up significantly by 25%, and MDKA with a value that went up 6.91%, and ICBP with a value that went up 5.24%, and INDF with a value that went up 4.81%. In the other hand, for the top losers for today's trading, we got PWON that is contracted by 1.51%, and ACRA with a value that went down 1.07%, not to mention about BHAT with a value that went down 0.89%, and BTPS with a value that went down 1.38%. Next, we are going to see the intraday movement of rupiah towards US dollar. So rupiah opened at the level of 14,623. Rupiah was also showing strengthening trend towards US dollar and was closed at the level of 14,607. In summary, rupiah was strengthening at 0.23%. In order to boost performance in the full year of 2020, Tower Bersama Infrastructure has observed capital expenditure of 1 trillion rupiah during the first half of 2020.
In order to boost performance in 2020, Tower Bersama Infrastructure has absorbed capital expenditure of 1 trillion rupiah during the first half of 2020. Previously, the company allocated capex of 1 up to 2 trillion rupiah for organic expansion in 2020. The capex was used for the addition of new towers and co-location. Meanwhile, in the terms of performance, throughout the first half of 2020, the company recorded revenues of 2.57 trillion rupiah, or grew by 13%, while net profit reached 510 billion rupiah, or inclined by 33.5% year-on-year. Finance Director of Tower Bersama Infrastructure Helmi Yusman Santoso said that in the first half of 2020, the company had added 2,570 tenants with a total capex of 1 trillion rupiah. Meanwhile, until the second half of 2020, Tower Bersama Infrastructure also targets double-digit growth for revenue, EBITDA, and net income. From all sources for IDX Channel.
Retailer company Mitra Adi Perkasa admitted that it had been significantly affected by the temporary closure of shopping centers and decreased customer demand due to COVID-19 pandemic.
Retailer company Mitra Adi Perkasa admitted that it had been significantly affected by the temporary closure of shopping centers and decreased customer demand due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In the first half of 2020, the company posted a net loss amounting to 407.94 billion rupiah, while in the same period in the previous year, the company managed to record a profit of 499.32 billion rupiah. This was caused by a decrease in net income of 47% of an annual basis in the first half of this year. The main cause of the loss is the high operating expenses, which caused operating losses of 330.93 billion rupiah. Ratih Ganda, VP of Investor Relations and Corporate Communication of MAP Group, say that the company has taken responsive steps to strengthen the business by deploying all omni-channel capabilities. Meanwhile, despite posting a loss, the company claimed that during the pandemic, there was a growing demand for delivery services, shopping, and daily necessities. From all sources, IDX Channel.
Stay tuned on market headlines because we will be right back after this quick break.
Aktivitas manufaktur China mengalami pertumbuhan tercepat pada Juni 2020 usai pemerintah melonggarkan kebijakan lockdown.
Rata-rata frekuensi harian di Bursa mencapai 469.000 transaksi dan menjadi yang tertinggi di kawasan Asia Tenggara.
Sementara itu, PT Garuda Indonesia Persero Tbk membukukan pendapatan turun 30,14% dibanding periode yang sama di tahun lalu.
Industri pertambangan, saya melihat bahwa ya ini industri yang kalau dibilang unik ya. Resiko dan hasil itu tidak selalu sejalan. Kita sulit untuk mendapatkan ada penambang-penambang muda yang baru dan yang mau datang ke hutan untuk ketok batu lah, istilahnya ketok batu untuk mencari tahu apakah ada tambang di sana. Efisiensi itu sesuatu yang harus selalu diperhatikan ya. Semua pengeluaran itu harus reasonable.
Welcome back to Market Headlines. Deflations that happened on July indicates chronically weak consumer demand. Economic Observer warned the situations as the low inflation rate in the past second quarter may affect economic growth.
Indonesia currently faces a problem where consumers aren't spending enough and business aren't investing enough. These lead to deflations on July 2020 as much as 0.1%. Senior economist of InDef, Industri Hartati, stated that the consumer demand has yet to recover despite the government's decisions to reopen the economy. Based on the data from Statistik Indonesia, through the first half of 2020, Indonesia only recorded inflations of 1.5%. It means the number is very low compared to the same period of last year.
Justru terjadi deflasi itu semakin memperkuat bahwa daya beli masyarakat ini justru semakin merosot. Nah, kalau daya beli masyarakat merosot, tentu ini sebuah sinyal yang sangat buruk terhadap perekonomian kita. Karena konsumsi rumah tangga sudah pasti juga drop, padahal konsumsi rumah tangga itu penopang atau sumber pertumbuhan utama perekonomian kita. Nah, ini yang menurut saya harus benar-benar dipahami secara komprehensif.
Annie warned that this situation is very dangerous because economic growth in Indonesia is largely supported by domestic consumption, meaning that if there is a weakening of purchasing power, economic growth will certainly be threatened. Jakarta, Rahayu Pakmu for IDX Channel.
2020 is indeed very special. It takes only 7 months, but many countries have experienced an economic slowdown or even contractions. This happens as well in Indonesia. The fall in consumer prices has prompted concerns that economy will hardly struggle to escape economic consequences of coronavirus pandemic. And the easiest indicator is by emerging deflations in the country. And yes, it is confirmed that in July, Indonesia posted deflations. To get deeper view about that, let's open up the graphic sessions with Indonesia's inflation rates timeline throughout the years. So here it is. Through the graphic, we can see Indonesia's inflation timeline throughout the years. In 2020, here it is. In January, the inflation is on the level of 0.39%. In February, it went down to be 0.28%. Meanwhile, in March, it went down again to be 0.1%. April remains stagnant, while in May, we can see the decrease as many as 0.06%, and in June, it went up only a bit by 0.18%. But however, in July, we can see a contractions of minus 0.1%. And if we gather the data, hold the data in 2020, the trend is decreasing. And based on the figure, since Indonesia confirmed its first COVID-19 cases in March and subsequently imposed the so-called large-scale social restrictions, the country inflation has been slowing down. July marked the country's lowest record inflation since 2000 by minus 0.1%. And there are some sectors that experience most deflations. Let's see what are those in the next graphic. Here it is. The sectors that has the highest contributions of deflations among of the sectors. First of all, we can see food and beverages with the deflations of 0.73%. And moving on to housing, specifically when we talk about water and electricity, that the deflation hit the number of 0.01%. And moving on to transportations, that has a deflations of 0.17%. And through the data, we can see that food and beverages has the highest deflations among of the sectors. And as food sectors contribute most of the deflations, there are certain food commodities that experience major deflations. Let's see it through the next graphic. What are those? So here it is. We can see food commodity as a main contributor of the deflations. First of all, we got shallots, which has a deflations of 0.11%. And this is quite anomaly because shallots always been an inflations. And then next, it's the chicken meat by the deflations of 0.06% of deflations. And not to mention about rice, chili, and also sugar combined to be in the deflations of 0.01%. And we gathered the data from Statistic Indonesia by this week. And beside there was a deflations of 0.1%, consumer price index of 104.95%. And out of 90 cities, there are 61 cities experience deflations and 29 cities experience inflations. Let's see the cities with the highest deflations rate first, shall we? Through the next graphic, we can see cities with the highest deflations. First of all, we can see Manokwari, Papua, by the rate of deflations of 1.09%. And moving on to Sulawesi, We have a city of Bulukumba by 0.01% deflations. And moving on to Java, we got city of Bekasi by 0.01% of deflations. But in the other hand, there are cities as well with the highest inflations among of all. So let's see what are those in the next graphic. Here it is. We also have the data, the cities with the highest inflations. We got 3 examples for you. First of all, still from the Papua, same regions as the highest deflations, but this is in the context of inflations. We got city of Timika by 1.45% of inflations. And moving on to Java, we got Banyuwangi with inflations of 0.01%. And also still in the same region of Java, we got Jember. The city has an inflation rate of 0.01%. As the low inflation also indicates low economic growth. Deflations is said to be a situations when there is an excess stock in the market while the demand is down. This is what triggers a decline in prices, and therefore, not only low inflation rates, but Indonesia has swallowed another bitter pills for the fact that economic growth in the second quarter has contracted by 2.32%. And yes, it has already been confirmed today by Statistic Indonesia that Indonesia posted negative economic growth for the first time since 1998. Deflations and minus economic growth are the worst duet of shocking drop. But pretty understandable that Indonesia economy was shut for a considerable period during quarter. Best hope goes for Indonesia to recover as soon as possible. And stay tuned to market headlines because we will be right back after this quick break.
Rangkuman sentimen yang berhasil dihimpun oleh tim redaksi kami, di mana 3 emiten asal Indonesia masuk ke dalam daftar 12 saham dengan tingkat keyakinan tinggi pilihan JP Morgan.
Journal of Medias menyatakan, potensi vaksinnya untuk mencegah COVID-19 menghasilkan respon kekebalan kuat pada semua 45 pasien dalam uji coba tahap awal pada manusia. Dari dalam negeri, Presiden Joko Widodo akan membubarkan 18 lembaga di bawah pemerintahannya.
Adikarya komitmennya kemanapun dan apapun yang akan dibangun oleh negara, kita akan siap mendukung. Kita juga saat ini punya proyek di ujung Banda Aceh dan juga punya proyek di Papua.
Saksikan IDX Channel, Your Trustworthy Economic, Business and Capital Market Channel.
Welcome back to Market Headlines. The Central Statistic Agency reported that Indonesia's economic growth in the second quarter of 2020 minus 5.32% compared to the same period in 2019.
The Central Statistic Agency, or BPS, reported that Indonesia's economic growth in the second quarter of 2020 minus 5.32% compared to the same period in 2019. Head of BPS Suharyanto stated Indonesia's gross domestic product based on constant prices in the second quarter of 2020 reached 2,589 trillion rupiah. Previously, economic growth in the first quarter of 2020 reached 2.97% or began to show a slowdown. According to Suharyanto, COVID-19's domino effect starts from health problems, spread it to social and economic problems. This negative economic growth is the first time since the 1998 period, or when Indonesia experienced the Asian financial crisis. Previously, Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati estimated that the Indonesian economy in the second quarter of 2020 will contract in the range of minus 3.5% to minus 5.1%, with a midpoint of minus 4.3%. From all sources for IDX Channel.
Maksudnya enggak. Salah mulu gue. Second quarter of 2020 has brought deep contractions to Indonesia's economic growth, as it was minus 5.3%. Based on the category, household consumption was one of the deepest contractions with a minus 5.51%. Compared to the same period of last year, Indonesia's economic growth fell to minus 5.32%. In addition, Indonesia's economy in the first half of 2020 towards the first semester of 2019 experienced contractions of 1.26%. Household consumption was heavily impacted as it was contracted by 5.51%. There's a huge concerns over household consumptions since the sector contributes much on national economy. In fact, 60% of gross domestic product was from household consumption.
Semua komponen mengalami kontraksi yang cukup dalam. Di sana bisa dilihat bahwa konsumsi rumah tangga tumbuh negatif 5,51%. Investasi atau PNBP juga tumbuh negatif 8,61%.
To support regional tourism, Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy is bolster alliance with the regional banks by giving credit to related business actors.
Not only inject stimulus to business actors through associations of state-owned banks, but government also inject it through regional banks. In this case, regional banks are involved in distributing small-scale credit. Spokespersons of the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, Juliano Gema, stated that the stimulus will be given by giving fund to regional banks so it can distribute small-scale credit and will raise tourism business actors' appetite to boost tourism sector recovery. Regional banks are chosen because of its capability on distributing funds to locations that are reachable by associations of state-owned banks.
Pertama, tentu saja kita melihat bahwa BPD ini dianggap lebih mengetahui lokal situasi, kondisi dari perekonomian di lokalnya. Dan juga sekali lagi pemerintah daerah dalam hal ini akan lebih mudah untuk berkoordinasi ketika mereka mengetahui industri mana atau siapa-siapa pihak-pihak yang memang sangat membutuhkan hal tersebut gitu. Karena sekali lagi ini dengan dana tersebut atau stimulan tersebut diberikan kepada BPD, ini termasuk juga menggairahkan perekonomian lokal juga yang selama ini kalau kita lihat kan akibat dengan pandemi ini kemudian wisatawan turun akhirnya mempengaruhi perekonomian lokal. Itulah mengapa BPD-nya juga itu yang memang sangat di daerah-daerah yang sangat terpengaruh hal tersebut.
Tourism sector is one of the sector hit most by COVID-19 pandemic, as data from Central Statistic Agency in May 2020 recorded tourism trips dropped around 100% compared to previous months. Even Central Bank also noted that the foreign exchange through tourism sector decreased to 97% year-on-year. From Jakarta, Muhammad Olga for IDX Channel.
A large explosion in Lebanese capital Beirut has killed at least 100 people and injured more than 4,000 others. One victim was identified with Indonesian nationality. The whole city was shaken by the explosions, and a mushroom cloud could be seen spreading over the port area. Spokespersons of Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that there was one Indonesian citizen who was injured. The woman who was injured was in the Jalan region, about 8 kilometers from the port of Beirut, but he soon confirmed conditions were stable. Indonesia Ambassador for Lebanon, Fadrianto Tohari stated that Indonesia is willing to give aids for Beirut, for instance, food aid. 70% of Lebanese imported goods, including food and other basic necessities, come from the explosion sites. Minister of State on Enterprises Eric Thohir just visited Biopharma Lab to check the progress of COVID-19 vaccines development. In the result, Minister found out that biopharma production's capacity can reach 250 million doses a year.
Minister of State on Enterprises Eric Thohir ensured that biopharma production's capacity of COVID-19 vaccines can reach 250 million doses by the end of 2020. This huge number of capacity reflects biopharma readiness to help government out to handle COVID-19. Minister gave optimistic signal to biopharma's COVID-19 vaccines development. He also asked citizens for not adopting biopharma's vaccines, since biopharma is a major player in finding vaccines in Indonesia. Since 1980, biopharma has produced vaccines as many as 15 times, and the raw materials get halal licensed as well.
Artinya, kalau nanti vaksin COVID-19 ini benar-benar uji klinisnya baik, jadi ya insya Allah masyarakat jangan sampai ragukan, karena cerita biofarma itu dimulai sudah cukup lama dan sudah diakui dunia. Ya, dan insya Allah juga bahan bakunya tadi ya pasti halal, karena memang biofarma sudah menjadi salah satu pusat produksi vaksin halal. Ya, banyak negara-negara Timur Tengah juga yang sudah beli. Tapi tentu untuk vaksin COVID sendiri nanti kan sertifikat halalnya di MUI, ya, tapi ini bahan bakunya dan produksinya.
Even COVID-19 vaccines is on the step closer, but Eric Thohir still orders people to stand disciplined in applying health protocols. Jakarta, Wicky Adrian for IDX Channel.
And here it is, an update data about coronavirus globally. And the news close our market headlines today. Please enjoy our next program on IDX Channel, Your Trustworthy Economic Business and Capital Market Channel. I'm Clara Antawijaya. Have a nice evening and stay safe.